Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf podcast that interviews the best and brightest minds in the golf industry. Now, here's your host, Bernard Sheridan.
Doug, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, first question we always like to ask is, when is the very first time that you picked up a golf club?
I was 6 years old. My grandfather played and my dad played, so I started playing in the summers with my grandfather, and I started when I was about 8 years old, and just something I've always done.
And when was the first time that you had the aha moment that you thought, you know what, this might be a good career for me. I might want to pursue this?
Yeah, well, just growing up in the summers, everything I did was around golf and traveling, so it's all I've ever known, and every job I've had has been in the golf business, so it's just what we do.
So, and it was then pretty much it was like you never thought of doing anything else. That's just what you wanted to do.
Exactly.
Now,
met some great people and kept going from there.
So, and when you decided to get involved in golf and kind of just pursue it exclusively, what were your intentions? Did you just want to become a club pro? Did you want to absolutely become a teaching professional? Did you want to play professionally? I mean, what did you want to do when it all started?
Yeah, it's funny. Growing up, playing on a high school golf team, I actually taught most of the guys on the team how to play. So I've always been helping other people play the game and always trying to get better and learn myself. So still like to compete a little bit, but I've always been really good, I feel like, of helping other players, and that's what I've always done.
So as an age range of the players that you help now, what is the bulk of the age range that you're working with?
It's probably across the board, from juniors up and coming to a lot of business players and club players.
What do you find?
Not one specific area.
Okay. So, and what do you find are most of these players looking for when they come to you?
Most of them want to get better. I mean, they're not looking to practice and spend a lot of time building their game. And then two different levels, right? The juniors are always trying to see where they should be in 2 or 3 months, and then the club player, business player, trying to help them the best you can with a vision down the road of where you want to get them. But what can I give them now to make them better? Right.
So their main goal is just they want to get better quickly.
Exactly.
Is what the most of them want to do. I know that is with us too down here, and but of course to get better, it doesn't usually happen quickly. It usually takes a little bit of time for that to start to soak in and actually become a natural thing that they do. So what do you find is I want to say the duration of improvement that most of the players have with you?
It depends. If you try to always create matches, so if you can match some components up, they're instantly going to get better and get better results. With that being said, I always try to have a vision of where I'm trying to get them in a month or 2 months or down the road, so we're still headed in the right direction, but yet matching components up as we go so they can still play great golf along with getting better in the long run and not injuring themselves.
Now, in general, how many of those students, after they get to a point where they came to do something, and let's say they bought a series of sessions with you, mm-hmm. and they finished those sessions, and they're pretty pleased with what they did, how many of those are coming back again and return clients, and how many of those are like they're really just pleased and happy and satisfied, and you don't see them again?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a 50-50 split. Some guys get happy with the level of their game, and then some want to continue going and trying to get better from year to year.
So what are the majority of the things that you find as for problems that players have that come to you that are seeking help?
Well, I think there's so much information out there now that players don't have necessarily what fits them. And the right fix, like they watch YouTube or something and see something, but it's not necessarily what's actually happening. So taking that and trying to apply it to their game, and they get down a pigeonhole where they're even further away from where they should be. And if they came sooner or asked a question sooner, they could have got out of it a lot faster.
Sure, sure. No, I agree with that. I think that a lot of students, what they'll do is they'll try to gather information either on the web or through articles or whatever, and believing that that's the problem that they have, and that whatever that tip or that advice would be, they try that, but it doesn't necessarily work for them, and it's probably because they're misdiagnosing their issue.
Right.
Now, why do you think that the majority of players misdiagnose their issues?
Well, when they read an article or watch a video, the great teacher that wrote that article is writing to the masses, so they're not necessarily writing to that specific problem that player is having, and they take it as something that they need to do. So then they really just get combobulated and confused in what's right and what's wrong, and how things work.
What's right and what's wrong for them personally, correct?
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think that that the majority of what we see in because most of the people who are writing these articles, at least maybe not YouTube, but in major issues of golf magazines and things like that, that information pertains to somebody. It just doesn't necessarily pertain to the person who's reading it every single time.
Right.
Yeah. So
the information's great. It's just who it applies to.
Exactly. So when they come to you, what are what's like the standard thing that you go through the first time that you see them?
So I go through bioswing dynamics assessment is my first steps when I first meet a player, and then from there, I'm gonna try to find out how often I'm gonna see them or what their goals are, to know what I can apply the fastest to get them better the fastest.
Sure. So for some of our listeners out there, explain, because I know what you just said,
Sure.
Because I do that too a lot of times. I've gone through those programs, but there's a lot of people out there who don't really know exactly what bioswing dynamics is. So can you explain that a little bit in more detail to us?
Sure. So Mike Adams and E.A. Tischler have a series of assessments where they measure each person's body individually and body structure and dynamics to find out what is going to match that player's ability and how their body works, and length of arms to know what their arc should be, and then you can start to diagnose a player faster on what's going to fit them and what's not going to work. It's very important for us to know what's not going to work so we can find out what will work faster to get better results.
Sure. So kind of what that does is it gets them for you to better understand what their body type is and what their swing style is that's going to work best for them, and then work within that swing style and those parameters, as opposed to maybe you have a player who is a under player and you're setting him up for on top, so now he's releasing too early. And you might be trying to get them to be one plane as opposed to two plane, things like that. So so in other words, this is for instructors who want to teach, who usually teach one style and try to put everybody in one style, but they can't help everybody if they put them in one style.
Right. I mean, even if taking a guy that has a under grip or a strong right hand grip to move him to a weaker right hand grip is game-changing, life-changing for a lot of players, to allow them to square the club face instead of always fighting a closed club face.
Right.
It could be as simple as that to really change a player's career and enjoy the game just by a simple measurement of knowing what should happen.
Right. And then actually, too, when is their postural release and things of that nature. So, because some players will release too early and some players will release too late. For what their natural tendency really should be due to the fact of the way that they're measured.
Right. Yeah. I mean, last week I was at the KPMG Championship with a player I work with, and every player is different on the bigger tour. So trying to stick someone in a box is just, I don't see how it works it's going to work for some players because it matches their structure, but it just doesn't work for a group of people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I believe that not even just tour players, but every player has their own little natural thing that they should be doing that's going to allow them to produce the best swing for them. And as long as that thing that they're doing, if it's correct, is producing better impact, getting their swing bottom forward, allowing them to do all the things that they have to do to create the most power and the most efficiency in their swing, then that's really what, the best way to cut to the chase and just get right down to work and improve quicker, which I think across the board, I think that it's not as the way it used to be. I think that for a time there, a lot of people would be discouraged when they went to instructors because they would be put into a form that is really not exactly meant for them. But as I think with social media and things like that, and more of us in the industry learn all these different things, it's making us as a whole better instructors and allowing us as a whole to better service our clients and not let them feel like they're afraid if they take golf lessons, they're going to get worse.
100%. I mean, there's great information from everybody. You just got to pick and choose on what you feel is correct for that individual.
I totally agree with that.
It's the art of coaching at that point of knowing when to apply what.
Right. So with your players, in the beginning, of course, there's an evaluation. There's understanding what they need to do. So from there, do you think that you're more of an instructor, or do you move more into a coaching type situation with most of your players?
Yeah, after that point, with a better player, a college athlete, or an up-and-coming junior, it's more of a coaching role of structure, of finding a practice schedule that works for them and knowing their weaknesses and strengths, and having a plan, develop a plan for them to go back to, so you know if what you're doing is working or if it's not working. From week to week, they're playing a lot of tournaments, so you got to have something. If you have a plan or a direction, you can change, make subtle changes, and not be that far off track if you have a plan.
Sure. So, and usually when you put together a plan, how do you, for our players out there and for our listeners that are trying to do that themselves, what are some of the steps that you go through with your players? Do you evaluate certain parts of their game and then make a game plan from there?
Sure. A lot of it's based on the amount of time that they have to put towards the game, because a plan that you don't have time to accomplish is no good. So you want to make sure that it's accomplishable, and then make it as simple as you can and still headed to or fitting their weaknesses. They're hitting their weaknesses so they can improve upon those.
Sure. So how much of short game, putting, and full swing do you work on in retrospect? Is it more full swing for most of your players? Is it inside of 100 yards, or is it kind of like broken up into equal parts?
Yeah, I would say it's more of an equal parts. Or maybe even 50, doing 50-50 of short game, full swing, because it's all of it really. You got to do all of it to really become a all-around player.
Absolutely. Now, how much of the mental game do you work on with your players, if at all, or do you pass that off to other coaches?
A sports psychologist on staff that he gets involved and helps us with that. I learn a lot from him and knowing how to put that in their practice and help them, talk to them in lessons and even out on the tournament weeks, saying the right thing, keeping it positive, giving them cues to replace negative things when we're out there. So definitely been a help to me and learned a lot by being around another teacher and that's an expert in that field.
Sure. I know that for a lot of my players, once they get to a certain level, the mental game is really a lot of it because they have the mechanical parts down and their body knows what to do. Sure. It's just making the right decisions out there and then keeping it together.
Right. Yeah, I find a lot of players, they want to make a change to get better. They know what they're doing is not working, but maybe they don't realize the patience that they need to allow it to happen. And a allow it to come together. Where it works on the range and they get to the golf course, your instincts are going to come back. So that's a long process that I would say in today's world is not great for how fast we get everything for golf.
No, I totally agree. I think that that's one of the biggest problems right now is that we live in an instant society where everything happens quickly. And then I think also you'll get a lot of players who might be very athletic and really good at other sports and then come into golf. I have some players like that, and they're extremely frustrated because it's not coming as easy as all the other sports have come to them, and they expect it to be coming to be, right. and their expectations are much higher right. Than they really should be. So do you find that a lot of players who are fairly new to the game have higher expectations than warranted?
Absolutely. I think that expectations would be the number one thing that ruins golf, is people expect for it to be easy and expect to get results faster. You can work hard and not see results. There's other factors there that you have to have results, and everybody's working hard. It's just you got to allow it to happen. You kind of got to get out of your own way and allow it to work.
Yeah, it's kind of like life.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you try to force things to go your way, usually it takes longer. If you just sit back and relax and just do those little things each day that it's going to take to become successful at whatever it is that you want to do, over time things are going to add up and you're going to get your chance. And you'll just, it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time. Just like with players who are great players and can really go far as long as they're in the right place at the right time. If we look at the tour, some players were not in the right place at the right time, especially during the Tiger age.
Right.
Think about Phil Mickelson would have been number one for years and years and years, excuse me, if Tiger Woods didn't come along. So for him, he wasn't in the right place at the right time, but as for Tiger, he definitely was. So, yep. And it's the same with everybody else. I mean, there's just things that it might be that you're a really great player, but at your club, there's one other guy there, and he's just a little bit better. And no matter what you do, he's beating you out all the time. So it's time to go to another club.
Yeah, exactly. Time to move on.
Right.
Yeah. Same for your career, business career, right? It's about the timing and being at the right place and meeting the right person and mentors you've had, and it's all of that. I think as you've gotten older, and as far as I've gotten older, I look back and be like, if I could have been a little bit more patient, maybe this would have happened or whatever. But now looking back, if I know what, if we always say, if I know what I knew now then, things would have been different. But we're trying to relay that onto other players in our experiences of traveling and being around good players and learning. And sometimes they soak it up and want to hear it, and sometimes they don't. We can't control that.
No, that's true. We can just do the best we can to help them along with the moment that they're in at this time, and hopefully some of it'll stick.
Right.
So there's no way to force it to. So when you're doing lessons, like how much of that time do you spend with technology, and if any, and if you do, what technology do you offer to your students?
Sure. I use TrackMan, Smart to Move force plates, MySwing 3D. So it all depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on if I know the player or not, who they are, what they like, what they don't like. Maybe if I'm meeting a player, I'll do an assessment, find out where they're at, and then go from there. So it just depends, either off and on or not overly using it, because then they want to see the numbers, and it's not necessarily about the numbers to me. It's about heading in the right direction. So I use it sparingly, I would say.
Yeah, I know with us.
Turn it off.
I know with us we use TrackMan and Swing Catalyst, and we'll look at numbers, but we try not to get overly tied up in those numbers. At least I don't. Some of the other guys on the staff, I'm not sure about, because I'm not watching every lesson that they do. Sure. But I always think of that as like, I guess if you go to a doctor, it's like an MRI. So the doctor might show it to you. A lot of times the doctor never shows it to you because a lot of it you're not going to really know exactly what it is, and it's just going to confuse you more. But he might make little tiny references to it. And that's kind of like what I like to do. I might say, hey, you know, path is just a little bit, you know, you're about 9 degrees out to in here. So let's see what we can do to get your body working a little bit better, to get that path more in line with the target line, and so that you can get a better result.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. I might say, well, that was a 2. Let's make it a +2 or a -2, and see what that feels like for them, and then show them the number maybe, and then get out of it, and then hit some balls and maybe check it again later in the lesson. Or not every swing is being analyzed.
No, absolutely. So do you find that you mentioned you use force plates also? Do you find that you're using the force plates a lot to help them change path?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you get players more in the right pattern of moving the pressure, it definitely changes the path and makes it more efficient, and the speed definitely goes up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
When players think they have more control swinging slower, but the harder you swing, the straighter you're going to hit it when things line up properly.
Right, right. So I always like my players to swing as hard as they can, but be in control. So in other words,
Correct.
be in balance, and be able to come to a full finish, and be in a balanced finish at the time of when it's all done. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not so, even for junior players, I'm not so much worried about balance. I just want them to rip it.
Well, and that, right, and I agree with that in junior players too. I mean, let's get them to hit it as hard as they can. We'll worry about straightening it out later.
Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that allows their body to get a little bit more dynamic through the swing, and then of course, you know, because they are kids, they're going to get a lot more distance if they build up that club head speed a little bit.
Sure, which has changed a lot. I mean, when I was growing up, we were always worried about swinging smoother and slower and making it look nice. And now the game has changed so much that if you don't hit it far enough, it's tough to play at a higher level.
Oh no, that's absolutely true. I mean, everybody out on tour. I mean, like, well, what the heck? Look at the U.S. Open that we just had, and the yardage that it was at.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and what's to me even more incredible is that at that yardage, there's guys that are still hitting par 5s in 2.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing to me.
A week before the Open, I had a privilege of playing in the outing, and Jason Day and Dustin was there, and I got to play with Jim Furyk. And Jim's not a short hitter. I mean, Jim still gets it out there. He's considered a short hitter on tour, but he hits it so straight, hits it consistent, and he's a great short game. So, I mean, he has the full package, and he's not necessarily what people would consider short. He might be short for today's tour, but he's not short.
Right, exactly. Well, I think that that players who aren't bombing it tremendously far, their short game and putting has to be a lot better. But I think that everybody's putting has to be better if they're going to play professionally and win an event. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, all those guys, every single part of their game is great. They can get up and down from anywhere, and if they're not putting well, then they're out of it, and that's pretty much it. I mean, even though it is easier if they're hitting it farther, because they're on the green more often than not, and their putts are closer. So it's easier to make closer putts than it is further putts, but they still have to be able to read those putts and to execute those putts under pressure. And then, of course, pressure is always internal. So
absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the difference in the guys that play great that week and don't. It's the guys that make a lot more putts.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So, when it comes to putting, is there any type of system that you use with your putt, to teach putting, or you pretty much just go by, normal read and things like that? I know that there's a lot of different ways to do it out there. There's aim point. There's all different kinds of things.
Sure. So yeah, myself and another instructor here is certified in aim point. We use blast motion sometimes. We use SAM Putt Lab sometimes. I do a lot just by trying to get things in better balance myself and using my eye. I feel like I have a pretty good eye for knowing neutral and getting feedback from the players. So I teach a lot of just neutral things, but we measure with SAM and blast motion.
Sure. And we do that too here at Impact Zone. Yep. We use SAM and blast motion also. And it's it definitely, you get a better idea of what the player's tendencies are with that type of stuff. So at least you know what to work with, and you can give them a better idea as to, because a lot of times when you ask players, where are you missing, and some of them really aren't sure, because it's not, it changes from day to day. So
yeah. Once again, it's one of those where technology helps everybody. It's just using it at the right time and using the right piece of it that's going to help that player.
Exactly. So how much stuff do you do out on the golf course with your players?
Yeah, probably not as much as I'd like. I try to get out. I have a junior academy, so we try to get out once a week on the golf course just to hit shots and use imagery and learn some course management and stuff like that.
Excellent.
But I would like to do that more often with everybody.
I feel that way too. I feel that if I like to get every single student that I have out on the golf course for at least 9 holes. I don't. A lot of them don't want to do that, or they want to do that, but they just don't have time to do that, or it might be a financial situation. There's all different things, but I think that it really makes a huge difference. Because you can really see what the heck the person's doing out there in the real world, as opposed to on the lesson tee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can help a player so much by just seeing what's happening on the golf course in relation to the range, because most of the time we don't get the full story when they come see us on the lesson tee of what's actually happening.
Because I mean, sure, and they might feel more under pressure when they're with you on the lesson tee than they do on the course, or vice versa. They might feel a lot more pressure on the course than they do, and they're performing well on the lesson tee. Right. And then they go out on the course and they put all this undue pressure on themselves.
Right. Yeah, and even for juniors, from their parents or from other spectators, high school coaches or whatnot, of expectations from them. They're feeling it, but even though it might not be their parent, it's not true, but that's what they feel from just people watching them play.
Sure.
And they're, the results aren't as good as they should be just from the expectations that they're feeling. They feel undue pressure on themselves.
Sure.
From other outside sources.
So, Doug, is there any books that you would recommend for any of our listeners out there that you felt has helped you in your golfing career, or that has helped any of your students in their quest to become better?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Dr. Brett McCabe's new book. I thought that was really good. And instruction books, it's you go see your coach, because you can read a book and you don't know if it really applies to you or not. The information's all great. It's just whether it's needed or not. I mean, there's a lot of great books. James Seekman's short game books are great. Stanley has great books. They're just all, a lot of them are saying the same things different ways. It's just if the player can pick up on it out of the book. Right.
So for players who want to work with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is just to check out our website at spencergolfacademy.com. And you can shoot me an email, spencergolfacademy@gmail.com, and we'll set you up.
Awesome. Well, Doug, it was great having you with us, and wish you all the best of success in your career going forward. And what we always like to say here in parting is do your best to keep it in the short grass until we meet again.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
You've been listening to Breaking Par with your host, Bernard Sheridan. Follow us on Twitter @BreakingPar and on Facebook @Par Breakers Golf Academy. Until next week, try to keep it on the short grass.